Won't take too much time, but I think they allotted me 4 minutes, so hopefully I'll get 5 out of this. But I know you want to hear from all these great folks who are terrific friends and great thinkers on the file, so we'll get to that dans 1-2 minutes. Mais c'est un plaisir d'être ici, and I have to say that even just standing in this room brings back serious memories and some things I'd rather forget. But I was in this building back in the day. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but you used to be able to smoke in the back of those stacks over there. That's a long time ago. And so it feels good to be back here. It means that progress has happened, at least for me, I hope, and most people would attest to that. So, je suis Jay Khosla et comme Monica a mentionné, je travaille comme sous-ministre adjoint the Secteur de Énergie. I'm so super privileged to watch over Canada's energy policy framework. And, I would tell you that I just got back from India, and anytime I say that, I feel so distinctly proud of Canada to be able to talk in those terms, because Canada is extremely well respected, and that's on the energy file, on every file, especially now more than ever with the government sort of reinvigorating the international presence and the Prime Minister being in Davos and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really a testament to the work that happens here at Positive Energy and all of the good thinkers in Canada that drive this file forward and constantly want to be positively optimistic, Monica, about the richness of what we are sitting on. And I'll come to that in a minute. I'm going to share a little anecdote. But I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't talk about Positive Energy for a minute or two. And, it's an exciting panel. And, energy transition decision-making, is Canada up to the task? I would argue, yes, absolutely, we're up to the task, and then some. I hope that's what we hear, but we'll see. And Positive Energy has played a distinct role in sort of making the case that we are up to the task to some degree. And since its launch in 2015, I have really seen the intersection between Positive Energy and our energy policy framework in terms of the Government of Canada, the provincial governments, and then even the local governments, and pushing the envelope about how we can get better, especially in areas of public confidence and regulation. So I like that we're going to this next phase. And I also like the fact that we're not just focused on regulatory, but also Positive Energy's renewed focus on the low-carbon transition, which is, again, an intersection with a pretty important agenda the government has on the Pan-Canadian framework on climate change and generation energy, and I hope most of you folks know what those things are. And that is truly reflective of the government's national vision for what energy development ought to look like going forward, given the intersection of economic prosperity, environmental performance and outcomes, and Indigenous partnerships, which are three of the big themes that revolve around the file, as you know. And we all know that the energy sector is critical for Canada's future, but now more than ever, it's also critical for Canada to show that it's one of the most innovative and dynamic places by which to develop energy in the world. And I think that really is the greatest intersection of all, and that's where Positive Energy can make a true difference. And so I wanted to talk about that for a minute, about Canada's national vision, because I'm a good bureaucrat. I learned that here at Ottawa U, how to be a good bureaucrat. And in terms of setting the table, a good bureaucrat would tell you they're from Ottawa and we're here to help. And so, in all seriousness, I wanted to talk about, really 4 key themes to set the table, and I hope people will pick up on this in terms of where we're headed and what we're doing. The first is all about energy development, and that's in the here and now. The second is the notion of what I just talked about, the transition to a low-carbon future. The third is really on the international context, and the fourth is our work in the longer term, which is really centered around generation energy. And so, in terms of energy development, where were we, where are we, and where are we going? Well, energy and the development of our projects and our resources is critical, right, to the future, centering on issues of public confidence. I still remember when I first got into this job about 5 years ago, people used to come and say, "Oh, pipeline, no problem, get it done. we'll have a few discussions, and it'll be built, as Brenda well knows, that's not the case anymore, and we can talk about that a little bit. And then, this issue of low carbon transition. So we need to use this time of transition to maximize Canada's energy advantage. And that clearly means that we have to develop our fossil fuels. And I don't think the only debate there is, right, how are we going to develop them, and to what extent are we able to deliver them cleanly and succinctly to our partners who are looking for them. So in that vein, the government obviously came through with a set of principles a couple of years ago when it came in and said, we are not going to develop projects and approve them if they don't follow 5 or 6 critical principles, and then went on to approve the TMX pipeline, the Line 3 replacement, the Pacific Northwest project, the Nova Gas transmission line project, and on and on and on. Those principles really set the stage for ensuring that Indigenous peoples consulted and engaged effectively, Canadians consulted and engaged effectively, environmental performance part of it, and yes, discussing carbon in the overall project mosaic. Alongside that, the government invested in a couple of major pieces of legislation and programs. $1.5 billion put down on marine protection, the Pipeline Safety Act, which actually has mandated that polluters will pay. Polluters will pay, and I'm mindful, of the South China Sea incident that just happened. It is ridiculous that in this day and age that nobody is pursuing that. And I can guarantee you in Canada that incident would not occur the way it did, especially given all the investments in offshore pipeline and marine safety of late. We have more to do, no question. So on the development side, we're doing okay. One wonders a little bit about TMX, and we're watching it closely. We'll see what happens. But for sure, there's challenges of public confidence. And so the government is also moving quickly towards reforming the regulatory system on major project reviews. There has been consultation papers out there. I'm sure many of you have given us your perspectives. I really like the fact that the government is engaging on almost every element of its platform. You would have noticed in the last 2 years that if there's one sea change in all of government, it's the fact that this government is out consulting widely and vastly and bringing in opinion after opinion in terms of public policy making. And so that is now leading to a major change in legislation which will be upcoming. It has to do with rebuilding the trust in the environmental assessment, modernizing the National Energy Board, and then also relooking at the Fisheries and Navigation Protection Act, in some ways revisiting the changes that happened in 2012 to strengthen Canada's framework and hopefully remove the crisis of confidence to the degree that it can happen. And so I look forward to discussing that with you as the legislation gets released, and I encourage you to go look at the discussion papers that have been put out if you haven't seen them already. And I know we're going to hear a lot more about that element. It seems like we can't get out of regulation every time we talk about this file. But to take it in a different direction for a minute or two, I guess this backdrop, we're also looking at a low carbon transition. And the government, in its infinite wisdom, has moved in its first year on the Pan-Canadian Framework on Climate Change, which is a partnership with most provinces, and includes things like innovation, a lot of money going into innovation, especially on environmental performance, $2.3 billion on clean energy alone. Recently launched our Clean Growth Hub. There are prizes and competitions and X this and X that, all geared towards helping this industry, this set of sectors move forward. Investments in renewable power, smart grids. I'm proud to say that upcoming this week, we will be launching our remote communities off diesel initiative, which is a big development. Investments in interties, electric vehicles, charging stations, all on the mitigation side. And then beyond that, looking at how do we partner in that vein with Indigenous peoples, how do we engage them a little bit better, investments in new information and data. We'll be seeing a new, hopefully, information agency come up on energy. So that's on the, on the low carbon transition. International context, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it for a minute or two. I hope we do hear about some of this from the panel, but yes, we have a major public policy agenda to achieve market access. The backdrop to that is everybody in this room would know that our best customer or client is now our biggest competitor, and then some, especially under the auspices of Donald Trump at the helm. And so, you know, the world is expecting Canada to achieve market access, but not just on oil and gas. That's been sort of the localized and focus about the debate. It's actually more market access on the diversity of energy wealth that we're sitting on. Canada needs to maximize its energy advantage. And I don't know if you know, but our clean tech sector is one of the fastest growing sectors in the world right now, and it is number 4 here in Canada. I often go to fora like this and talk about how we're number 2 in oil reserves, number 3 in gas, number, second in hydro. Well, it's clean tech that's emerging, and this is part of this discussion here, and needs to be, in terms of Canada, switching its brand in the world, and not just being labeled an oil producer and a dirty oil producer. And obviously nuclear plays a role there. If you ever wanted to have a discussion on anything in the international fora, and you're representing Canada, you would know quickly that actually nuclear is our beachhead with most countries in the world. So, and they're looking to us to see what we do with that kind of stuff. We've been around the world in the last year and talked a lot in Paris about our sustainable global vision for energy, the International Energy Agency. We've been strengthening our links with US and Mexico, believe it or not, in spite of NAFTA. And there's a lot that could be talked about that, but I know that's probably not the main thing you guys are going to focus on. Although David may, you never know. I know he dabbles. We've also witnessed in China and India a re-emergence of Canada and the Indians and the Chinese wanting to talk to us about clean energy, clean growth, more than actually what they used to talk to us a couple of years ago, which is how can you get liquids on ships and fuel our economy. And I was just recently in India, as I said, and I just noticed, personally, the massive change in India and its needs. And if any of you have been to the Dharavi slum in Mumbai, I think there's nothing more poignant than seeing that slum actually turn itself into an economic powerhouse without all of the energy tools that it needs to get there. 80% employment in the slum, and yet they're still powering themselves with wood and coal, and their environment stinks, and so Canada has a major role to play there. I would encourage you guys to maybe, hopefully, apply on that, because that community is looking to us to give them better tools and solutions to drive their economy better. And then, so, finally, the future, the fourth point, we've got public confidence, we've got low carbon growth, we're developing and we're innovating. So what does the future look like? And as many of you in this room would know, about a year ago or so, Minister Carr decided to go forward with a concept called generation energy. And I would tell you, I talked a little bit about consultation and engagement. Well, there's been no bigger consultation and engagement that I've been part of in my fun time in the Government of Canada with generation energy. And maybe we can just play the video clip quickly, and then I'll close. Generation energy is a conversation that we're having with Canadians, and it was a symposium of 600 to 700 thought leaders and a year-long outreach to Canadians to ask, what does Canada's energy future look like? And believe it or not, 380,000 Canadians responded to questionnaires and surveys. They're eager to engage in this discussion, and they want to play a role, obviously, in the low-carbon transition and public confidence. And we are now sifting and sorting through all of that data with the help of a council, known as the Generation Energy Council, that will be producing a report in a few months that talks about what the shared energy vision could look like. And I just wanted to make sure that you folks are aware of that. And we look forward to engaging through positive energy or otherwise on that element. And I'm sure that the reflections of this panel will be incorporated into that dialogue. Please do check out the site. I can't do it justice, as you say, here and now, but the folks who were there, and all of these folks here were there, know the profoundness of that exercise. And just before I set up the panel, I wanted to close with this. Bruce Anderson, I think, who most of you know from the national at-issue panel, reminded me after Generation Energy that Canadians think, and he's done some polling on this, that better is always possible. And that's kind of what Generation Energy is sort of driving forward. And we have to be thinking about that. How is better always possible? Because traveling to India, they kind of wonder about us that way. They wonder, the Indians wonder that how can we sit on this gold mine of great stuff and yet not think about it in a view to ensuring that we're helping the world and helping ourselves help the world with this resource. So, but with that, I'd like to introduce Brenda Kenny, old friend and colleague, adjunct professor at the University of Calgary, member of the NEB panel that we had, and CEO of the former CEO of Canadian Energy Pipeline Association. Chris Henderson, another good friend and colleague, in charge of the Indigenous Clean Energy Network and co-founder of the Delphi Group, board chair of the Globe series of conferences. Mike Cleveland, senior fellow, Positive Energy Project, former president and CEO of the Canadian Gas Association, senior VP for the Electricity Association, and most importantly, formerly in my job, maybe he can tell you a little bit better than I can, ADM of Energy at Natural Resources, and finally David Reynolds, visiting professor at Institute for the Environment, University of Ottawa, former president of the International Institute for Sustainable Development. And honestly, I saw their bios and I could have gone on for a few more hours, and I don't want to do that. I don't think you want me to do that. But boy, what a rich panel. How lucky are you to hear from these folks? So Monica, I think with that, I'll turn it back, and I hope that was enough of the scene center. And anybody who wants to talk more about Jen, please see me.